Bienvenidos, Ushamdid, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 Certification Exam Preparation course, and in this video we're going to continue our journey with Lab 3.5.7, Create a Python Unit Test. We're focusing in this video on Part 3, Steps 1 and 2, and here's what you're going to learn in this video. We're going to take a look at that recursive_JSON_search.py file, and we're also going to look at the test_data.py file. We're going to focus on the import statement. And we really need to focus on a line-by-line review of what this recursive JSON search Python program is doing, and specifically the JSON_search function that is inside of that Python module. This is definitely the deep end of Python programming for the course. There is a lot going on here, and so we're going to break it down into easy, understandable chunks, which is why I've even broken Part 3 down into Steps 1 and 2 so that we can focus right away on some of the details, the little things that are going to make this lab really, really important. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go take a look at the test_data.py file. Whoops, sorry about that. The test_data.py file. Now, in order to see that, you are definitely going to need to be on your Python virtual machine. And this data is coming from a Cisco DNA Center API. So where are we at? PWD, I'm in my home directory, right? And again, my prompt reflects that with the tilde that represents, or you can think of it as like an alias /home/dev-ASC. So I need to get into the labs. We need to get into the DevNet source, and I need to get into unit test. Now, we were in here before. However, you're going to see that I have a number of files that exist in my unit test directory that you may not have. Now, you're going to have the files that are needed in order to complete this lab. So let's take a look at this test_data.py. Now, this is going to be a file in which we find some Python data. Now, this is in JSON format. One of the things that makes it a little bit confusing, at least this portion here, is that it looks just like a Python dictionary, right? Because what do we have here? So data, this variable name, gets the value of this dictionary. And inside this dictionary, we have just a bunch of key, separated by a colon, value pairs. So the key ID is representing that value. The key instance ID is representing this string value over here. The key category represents that string value there. The key status represents that string value there, right? So hopefully you're able to see that this is a dictionary. And what we've done is it's been put into a format where we are basically, again, this is just a regular Python file that says, hey, the variable name data is assigned the value of this dictionary. And again, the dictionary is pretty long. You can see we're only 11% of the way through the file. And then at the very, very top, we have these two kind of innocuous looking key1 and key2 variables that are assigned these strings here. And the key1 variable is assigned the string issue summary. And the key2 variable is assigned that random dumpster fire right there. So as we make our way through this test data file, you can see that the data variable is simply pointing to this, what was a JavaScript object notation, a JSON formatted object, and JSON calls what Python refers to as dictionaries, JSON calls objects. And what Python refers to as a list, JSON refers to it as an array. So this key connected device, the value is a list. And inside that list, we have a dictionary, which also then has key value pairs. And some of those key value pairs inside of that dictionary, which are inside of the list, are also dictionaries, right? So there's a lot going on here in this file. Now, we don't need to understand every single line in this file. We just need to know that up here at the very top, and this is where this could be a little bit confusing, is that we had those three the three variables up here: key 1, key 2, and data. And the reason that this file and this format that the file is in becomes important is when we go to create our JSON search function, because the very first line in that JSON search function is an import line, and we're going to be importing something. And so let's go ahead and take a look at some JSON data that maybe isn't as confusing as this data here, because there's a lot going on here. And so in order to, and whoops, I'm sorry about that. Looks like it pasted some stuff in there. In order to get a little bit better understanding, let's go ahead and take a look at ISS.py. Now, this is the International Space Station. I'm going to come back to this again, but take a look here. It's just as if we had said data gets assigned the value of this dictionary here. Now, again, this is probably going to make a little bit more sense than the test_data.py file, because we can kind of look at this and see, oh, okay, well, the first key value pair is, it's the key as message, and what's the message? Well, it's a success. Our query of this API server returned a success. And then we have a comma separating this key value pair from the next key value pair. And take a look here. The key is people, and then the value is a list, and that list is simply a series of dictionaries that are in the list. So people, open bracket 0, close bracket, would refer to the first element, which is this dictionary, which gives the name and the craft that Sergey is on, which is the International Space Station. So people, open bracket 1, close bracket, we index into the value of the people key, which is this list with these little dictionaries, and each little dictionary is simply the name and the craft on the name of the astronaut and the craft on which that astronaut currently resides. And so you can see here, we've got all these little teeny dictionaries. Now we get down closer to the bottom here, and you can see, I think they're all on the, well, everybody's on the ISS except for the last 3 astronauts here. They're on a different Shenzhou 15 spacecraft. But again, what we see is when that list ends, and again, the elements of that list are all these little dictionaries here with astronaut names and spacecrafts, and we can index into that list just like we do a normal list. But then the last key value pair tells us the total number of astronauts who are currently in space with the value in integer 10. And then this JSON object, which Python treats as a dictionary. And that's the beauty of the JavaScript object notation, is that the array in JavaScript is just a list in Python. The object in JavaScript object, I should say JSON, when I said JavaScript, I mean JavaScript object notation, which it has nothing to do with JavaScript other than kind of use the name, part of the name. So in JSON, an object, which is indicated by the curly braces, is identical to a dictionary in Python. And so we can use that data, right, just like, or manipulate that data just like we would a dictionary in Python or a list in Python. All right, well, let's go back over to the virtual machine, because we just took a look at all of this data, right? And you can see what's in here. It's tough to track because there's so much going on here. But again, it's just a bunch of key value pairs inside of JSON objects or JSON arrays that we can treat like Python dictionaries or Python lists. So here in the unit test directory, they want us to create the file. And again, they give you the code to do this, but it certainly will help to understand what exactly this code is doing. And so here's the file they want you to create, which is this file called recursive_JSON_search. And again, all this file is a single function. And this is the function on which we're going to perform unit testing. We're using the unit test library, and we're doing unit testing on recursive_JSON_search because it is going to be going through this test underscore data, all of this JSON data in here that's in that Python file, and we need to test to make sure that the results that we're going to get back are valid. So here we go. Right out of the box here, the first statement, and this is very, very important. You can see that we're importing, right? And we say from test underscore data. Now remember, when you're importing, you do not put the .py here. But that's all this is representing, is we're saying from the file or Python module test underscore data.py, I want to import asterisk. Now, you might be asking yourself, what exactly does this mean? What is asterisk? Well, that means that you are importing each of the variables and their values that you see in there. So any of the names that are defined in the test underscore data.py file, those are being imported into this file. And here's why this becomes a little confusing. If you don't understand what that's doing, you may come down here and say, okay, well, I see here they want me to print, and we call the JSON search method function. And what do we provide to the function? We provide two arguments. The first is the string issue summary, and the second is data. Now, again, if you're looking at this in the PDF, or once you have put the information here into the recursive JSON searching Python module, you might look at this and say, well, data, where is data? Where is data in here? There's no mention in here of data. And this is where it could become confusing. But remember, from the test underscore data.py file, we are importing the asterisk. And this represents the names that are defined, the variables we have defined in that test underscore data.py file. Well, again, let's take a look at that test underscore data.py file. What are the variable names? So we're going to get key 1, we're going to get key 2, and we're going to get data. And this is the data that we're talking about. So the data that's in this file, we are importing it, we are bringing it in to this recursive underscore test Python file module that we have here, right? And that is what we get when we use the asterisk. Now remember, we've seen the import statement before. If I was to go out to the Python interactive interpreter here, we've seen the import statement before where I say import requests. And you might be wondering, why don't we just say import test underscore data? Why am I saying from test underscore data import asterisk? And what I'm going to show you right now is the difference between those two statements, because there's a significant difference between those two statements. So what I've done here is this output that you see that's inside this iss.py file. Well, let me come over here and say let me just go ahead and say import ISS and hit enter. So I've just imported this module. Now, the problem is if I wanted to refer to ISS and, okay, show me messages, right? Now remember, just message, I'll change that in a second. So I'm saying I've imported this file, so I should have access to that name, this variable ISS, and the dictionary or the JSON object to which it points. So if I was to say ISS, open bracket, and then put in the key, I should get the value, right? So if I put the key in for message, I should get the value success. So let's try that and let's see what happens. And let me go back and correct that. So that's what you would expect because I've imported ISS. So, and again, the module name is ISS, but with that, shouldn't I get that ISS JSON object that's referenced by the variable name ISS. But we get an error here, and the type error is very telling. It says module object is not subscriptable. Because when you say import and you give the module name in which those variables that are pointing or assigned to values reside, you're getting, what you're creating here is a reference to the entire module object, right? So we're getting the reference to the entire module object when I say that. So I can't simply just say ISS and then message, right? And use that key to get the value, because Python is saying, well, you can't do that. You pulled in and created a reference to the entire module object, not the individual variable names that are defined in the object. And so could I still get down there with importing ISS like I did? Yes, I could say ISS and then dot, and I think, and then I think we should be able to see the value by doing that, right? So when you say import the module, you're importing the entire module. You're creating a reference to the entire module object. So then to dig in and get the values that might be in there, the variable names that might be in there, I have to say object name dot variable name, right? That I'm the variable name that's in that file, and then the key, and I get it. And again, this is one way to do it. But the way that they're showing you over here is they're saying from test_data import asterisk. So let's take a look at what would happen if I was to say from ISS import asterisk. Now remember, the asterisk is like a wild card, and it means everything. And this is going to do something different. This is importing each of the names, right, the variable names in that Python module into this namespace. So if I was to say dir and hit enter, you can see that, excuse me, we see that ISS is in there. And maybe I should have ran that before so we could have compared, but we see that ISS is in there. So now that I've said from this module, import each of the variable names that you see in there individually, not as an entire module object, now I can say ISS message, because I've pulled in the variables and the values that they point to. I can reference them directly. And again, this may seem like semantics, but it makes a big difference. And now I'm going to show you something else. This approach right here is considered poor practice. And so I was a little shocked that this was in the lab to begin with. So when you say from test_data import asterisk, yeah, we know that it's key 1 and key 2 and then data. But if you were doing this on a larger scale and you're pulling in every named object or every variable name, right, all the names in that module into your module, you might run into naming conflicts. So this is considered poor practice to use this asterisk here. So I'm going to show you what you would want to do. If you knew what you were pulling in, obviously you would know the variable names you're going to pull in. You would say from ISS import ISS. And then I can simply use the same approach here and say ISS message and do that, and we get success. So what else could we get out of ISS? Well, let's go back and take a look at the file. Well, okay, I'm going to use the key name people to get the value, which is this JSON array, which is a Python list. And let's see what that looks like if I say ISS and we pull this back and we say PEOPLE. What do we get? There's the key, and I get the value, which is a Python list. And you can see the list starts right there, and the elements of the list are these little dictionaries that are in here, and each little dictionary has the name a key value pair of the name of the astronaut's name, and then a key value pair of the spacecraft and the name of the spacecraft they're on. And here the list ends. So if we know that ISS people is going to give me a Python list, how can I dig into that list? Well, we index into the list. So if I wanted to see the first astronaut listed who's at index position 0, I would say ISS, give the key for the dictionary, which has a value of that list, and then give the index position of the item in the list I'm interested in seeing. There we go. If I was to ask you, show me the last astronaut in this list. Yeah, you could sit here and be like, oh man, okay, so there's 1 and there's 2. No. Remember, -1 will index into the list and always give you the last element in the list. And it is Zhang Lu, and she's on the Shenzhou 15 spacecraft. Now, what if I wanted to dig in even further? What if I wanted to just pull the name of the last astronaut in the list? Well, then we know that right there indexes in and gives us this dictionary, this Python dictionary, which JSON refers to that as an object, but we're working in Python now. So Python's just going to treat it like a dictionary. Well, how do I get the value for a name value pair? Well, if this is going to return the line above, all I need to do is say, give me the name of the astronaut. It's Zhang Lu. If I wanted to know, if I asked you, give me the spacecraft name that the last astronaut in the list is on, then you would just simply come down here and say, craft. Well, we're going to have to change one other thing. Whoops, sorry. We're going to say craft. But we have to change one other thing. If I run this right now, what's going to happen? We get the Shenzhou 15, right? Because we're referencing the last element in the list, which is this dictionary with these 2 key value pairs. So if that's going to give me this dictionary, how do I get the value for the craft key out of there? Well, I just simply refer to the key, right? So there we go. And this is referred to as parsing JSON data. And this becomes critically important when we start to progress in the course, is understanding how we would dig this data out. All right. So again, I want to provide you with a simpler example, and I wanted to go over this import semantic, right? So how would we do that here with a virtual machine? Well, I've created a couple script, this import example, right? So if I was to say cat 01 import examples, here's the example they give you, right? From test_data import asterisk. Again, poor practice. How would I import all of those name values that I specifically want? It's that statement right there, which is commented out right now, right? But this is the statement right here where I'm saying, hey, from test data import, give me key 1, give me key 2, and give me data. Because I know what I want out of that file, right? And again, that would be considered a better practice than using the asterisk. Again, in this context, sure, we can use the asterisk because there's nothing else in that file, and we know it's key 1, key 2, and data. But I've got to point this out so that this does not become sort of a bad habit, because it can cause problems down the road. So we're going to run this, and you're going to see here that it's going to print key 1, print key 2, and print data. Right now, when it prints out the data, it's going to print a bunch of stuff. But this is to show you that you can actually import a Python module that simply just has variable names and the values that those variable names point to, right? Those names, those objects that are in that file. So we'll say Python 3:01 import examples, and there you go. So here's all of the JSON data in that Python sees as a dictionary, right? You can see right there, it's going to see it as a dictionary. We start with that open curly brace, and then what do we have? Key value pairs, comma, another key value pair, comma, another key value pair. So then we can parse that data and dig out what we want. But then it also showed us key 1 and key 2. Remember, we printed key 1 first, and then we printed key 2. So that works great. If I go back in and we VI this file, let's comment that line out. We're going to uncomment that one, and we're going to comment that out. And, oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to leave those for now. Because again, see, this is going to show you the alternate approach when you pull the entire module in, when you reference an entire module object is what those last 3 lines are doing. And again, this is how you would have to dig in and get that data out by using the dot notation, right? So let's see what happens when I say from test_data import key 1, key 2 data, right? Well, as you would expect, it's going to do the exact same thing that it just did. And there you go. It prints it all out, but it works. And that would be considered a better practice, right? So we get this data, and now let's turn our focus. And this is going to be sort of the last thing that we touch on here, is let's create this file, which I already have, this recursive test file, right? Which I'll leave this in here because that's what they've got in the lab. So if you're trying to compare line by line. And so what happens here? Well, this entire file, and let me go back up here. I put some comments in here for you as well. This entire file is really this function. And so here's a function called JSON_search. What are the 2 arguments it takes? It takes a key and it takes the input_object. And you're going to see, again, these are the parameter names here. So once we get into the function, you're going to see the first argument that gets sent in treated with the variable name or the parameter name key. And then the second object that gets passed in as an argument is going to be using the parameter name input_object, which you'll see right here in input_object.items, right? Well, this is saying that it's a dictionary, right? And it's checking to see if, and it uses this is instance. And I like to say is instance of, right? So if, and here's how this works. So if the input_object, which gets passed in, which is passed in right here. So it's going to be the second argument down below that we pass in. If that is a dictionary, so if this is true, that the input object is an instance of the dictionary class, then we iterate over that dictionary using the items method. And remember, in the previous video, the sort of supplemental tutorial where we looked at the 3 different ways you could iterate over the elements in a dictionary, this was one where we use the items method. And so we're searching for the key in the dictionary. And so we go to check if K, right? And remember, that's just a placeholder in this for loop, but it represents the key. If it equals the value key, or KEY here, then we're going to assign that key value pair to a temporary dictionary, right? And then we're going to take the return.val and append that to the temporary dictionary. So what is return.val? Well, right here at the very beginning of the function, and if you've already looked at this lab, you'll know that this is a mistake, because what happens is every time the function runs, and we, excuse me, every time the function runs, this list, and if I said dictionary, sorry, it's this list right here, this list gets overwritten. It gets reinstantiated. So it doesn't continue to hold on to things because this is a locally defined or locally scoped variable. So ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to put it up here so that it's globally scoped, because right now it's locally scoped. So all we would do is if K equals key, right, searching for the key in the dictionary, then we're going to append that key value pair to this list. And we would do that over and over and over again. Now, if this is not true, if this statement right here is not true, if K equals key, then what happens? Well, we come down here and we check to see, and again, this is kind of like a nested if. Well, actually, it's not a nested if. We come down to look at this if, and it says, okay, so now we're checking to see if is V, right? once we've appended the key value pair, we're going to dig in further. Is the value from up here, right? The value that this key value pair represented, does it have a nested dictionary? So is the value a dictionary? Again, if is instance of, is the value of that key a dictionary? And if it is, we recursively call the JSON search function, right? To then again look at the key and then take in the key and the value as the arguments that are going to get passed in that would then go in as the key and the object, and we check. And if that's the case, that it is a dictionary, then we run this again. If K equals key, the key that was passed in, then we do this, and we do it again and again and again until we exhaust all of the possible key value pairs where you have the key, but the value is a dictionary. So what if it's not? What if the value is not a dictionary? Well, then let's check to see if that value that this key value pair represents is an instance of a list. Because if it's a list, we can iterate over that list again, looking to see, are the items in that list, right? So if not is instance of item, where it's a string and an integer here, if it's a dictionary or a list, we repeat. We call the JSON search again. So what we're checking for is we're checking to see, is the list item a dictionary? And if it is, we take the key value pair, the key item pair here, and we pass this back in to JSON search, and it goes in as a key and an input object. So again, there is a lot going on here in this function, which is why we wanted to take the time to cover this. Let me clear the screen here, and let's go down. We have a little bit further to go down, so hang with me here, because we have to understand what this is doing. So up here, a little higher up, right? So we basically recursively go through, and we're looking to see. And you might be asking yourself, well, wait a second, where's the key? Well, the key is going to be what we pass in as the first argument, which is simply the string issue summary. So what are we doing? We're looking for the key value pair. We're going through all of the data, the input object, which is the data which references all of that JSON data that is in the test_.py file, which is a JSON object, which Python sees as a Python dictionary. And we're looking at the issue summary and all of that JSON data, which is a Python dictionary. And we're recursively going through there, trying to determine all of the key value pairs, because we're trying to find all of those values, looking for what would be the error message that we would see with issue summary, right? We're looking for the issue summary. And so again, we're digging through everything to try to find the key value pair issue summary, and then what is its value out of all of that data. Now we come down to this last else statement. So this says up here, right? Remember, if it's an instance of a dictionary, if the input object, which is the data, which is the JSON object in that data, the data file, if it's a dictionary, then we're going to do all this stuff recursively to dig out all of those values, the key value pairs. If it's not a dictionary, then we're going to treat it as an else, because sometimes JSON will pass its objects in as lists. Oh, I should say it passes the data in as lists as opposed to an object, and that the object actually sits in a list. And so this is sort of our catch-all here. So if it wasn't a dictionary that we got with all that JSON data that we were trying to iterate over, none of the above code would have done anything. So we say then else. Well, maybe if it's not a dictionary, maybe it's a list, because some APIs are going to return your JSON objects in a list. And so what do? We just iterate over that list, and we say, if not, so if it's not an instance of the value and then the string integer, right? So we're checking to see whatever the value is and then the string integer pair. If it's not an instance of this, right, then we're going to run JSON search, or I should say, then we run JSON search on the key value pair, right? And the key is summary, and then the value would be the dictionary. And then we would return, ultimately, we return the return value, right? And what is that return value? Well, it's the list to which we're appending every instance we find where the key is issue summary along with its value, which would be, and we're assuming it's an error message, right? So again, there's a lot going on here. And this final print statement actually calls the JSON search function in this file, passes in issue summary as the key, and then data, which is all of that JSON data. So let's run this and let's see what happens. So I say Python 3, and this is also a great example of indentation and how critical the indentation is. And I'm going to show you an example of what it looks like in VS Code, because you can put this in VS Code just as easily as I did here in the VI editors. Well, what do we get back? We get back an empty list. Now, the lab tells you that that's what you're supposed to get back. It said you should get no errors and an output of the empty list, indicating that the list is empty, that there were no errors. Now, if the JSON search function in this file that we looked at was coded properly, we should have received an error message back, because let's go into the test_data.py file. And well, I just landed, I'm on it right there. So is there issue summary, right? Well, yeah, key one is issue summary, but where else does issue summary occur? Well, it occurs right here. So, and what is the value of the issue summary key? It's this message, network device 10.10.2082 is unreachable from the controller. So that is actually what we should be seeing. But for some reason, we have a problem here. And here's where unit testing comes into play, right? Because if I'm writing this function and I want to confirm and do testing to make sure, hey, before I put this into production, because we need to depend on this, we need to know if that network device 10.10.2082 is not responding. And so this is where I would create my unit test module. And again, that's going to be step 3, and we're going to get there in a second. But what I want to show you now is, well, what would some of this look like? And here is the unit test module, but we're interested in recursive JSON search, right? So this is the Python module that contains that single function and then the calling of the single function, but there's something wrong in this file. And that's what we have to shoot. And the reason I wanted to pull this up is because this gives you a much nicer sort of color-coded graphical representation of how the indentation is playing its part in this file. So again, this is definitely the deep end of the Python pool, and there's no question that this is going to definitely stretch your Python skills. And so that's why I felt it was critically important to explain why it is we're doing what we're doing, what we're seeing, instead of, oh, the lab tells me, copy this data, this information here, copy this code, dump it into a file, run the file. Okay, it gives me an empty list. If you have no idea why you get the empty list and what all of this code means, then the lab, I think, is kind of missing the point, right? We need better coverage of what all of the code is doing, right? And what the JSON data is, and maybe a smaller example to handle before we dive into this. All right, well, that is a comprehensive look over Part 3, steps 1 and 2. And again, critical that we understand what that code is doing with that is instance of and how that works, because you can use that to your advantage in other code. All right, well, thank you guys so much for watching. I know this ran a little bit long, but I feel it's just really important that we kind of understand what that code is doing. and the different ways that we can do the import statements. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you're enjoying the course still. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video.